Yes, he can, because Blue Beetle signals the demise of superhero movies. That's not me saying it, that's the Express. The scariest part of it might be that they think a 2 out of 5 signals the demise of the entire industry. Jamie Reyes is chosen as a symbiotic host and bestowed a suit that gives him extraordinary powers that he doesn't want to use. Yeah, strap in and strap on for this one, because there will definitely be spoilers. And by the end of it, you'll probably wish that you didn't know about them either. This was a movie where 15 minutes in, I had an overwhelming urge to start looking at my phone. This wasn't how long has this been going, this was I want to be anywhere else.
Okay, I'm gonna disable the pressure valve. Too late. Wait, no!
And with reviews like that, I don't think I was the only one. Blue Beetle is an unremarkable, generic mashup of superhero traits. There was nothing genuinely exciting about the concept, and using a Barbie version of a minigun was not enough to make Blue Beetle fun. Now, I do think there'd be some audiences that would find this movie absolutely hilarious. Like if you showed it in a hospital, in a lobotomy department. Most of the jokes can be summed up as, haha, do you recognize that thing? And that's not a very good sign for something which wants the main character to be the DCU's version of Nick Fury, to the point where he wanted 12 more years as the superhero. And if you want 12 years as a superhero, you need some kind of long-lasting idea, some kind of through line that can develop over multiple movies. But in this, it was basically, I'm Latino. Okay, I don't care. Now what?
Representation matters, you dealing with a monster.
When that is the foundation of your movie and there isn't anything really built upon it, kind of like, well, what else do you have? If you made an English version of this movie, it would be me driving along in a car, discussing with the Queen all the different names of bread rolls around the country, as we ate fish and chips, on the way to having afternoon tea at Ascot, with an extra side dish of tea and crumpets. Of course, a villain would be trying to thwart this adventure, but he'd eventually turn good after eating a full English breakfast. And if that sounds like a parody, it's because that's the way it comes across.
Did you take a stupid pill with your breakfast this morning, Admiral?
Now, Blue Beetle has been hailed as the last gasp for superhero films. And if that's true, James Gunn is in trouble. Because while people are saying, oh, Blue Beetle just takes itself less seriously than most comic book movies, who didn't really take themselves seriously anyway, Thor literally had children beating up the villain with teddy bears. If you want to come across less serious than that, you enter parody territory, which is kind of how this felt. I kept expecting Austin Powers to pop out of the wall scenery and start talking about tacos. One of the family members drives a truck that he's called a taco. I'm not even joking. The scary thing is, I think they were. And that is one of the major problems with the movie. That Blue Beetle's true superpower is La Familia, which is absolutely true. For most of the movie, Blue Beetle is awful. He's got this superhero suit, which is sentient and can just control itself and beat up anybody. And so the only thing he has to do to win a fight is just go, fight him please. And yet for the first 90 minutes, he spends it messing everything up because he's preventing the AI from guarding him. At one point, he's literally getting punched in the face going, no, don't hurt him, don't hurt him. His father even dies because of this.
Dad issues.
A load of the villains are shooting him, he realizes he's bulletproof, so they start to shoot the family instead. He goes to guard them with his energy shields, and when the AI goes to kill the people who are trying to slaughter his family, he goes, no, please don't do anything to him. So he starts blasting away with noise waves and stuff, so obviously they just get back up and start shooting again. This means the threat isn't dealt with, and his dad dies of a heart attack due to it. Then you have a bigger problem that distracts him from the main villain and causes him to get captured by the villain, which he was about to fire at and take down, but he got distracted because something shiny was happening over there. This is a kid who makes the wrong decision in basically every single situation, and people die because of it. People dying due to your idiocy and then going, but I don't kill people myself, does not a superhero make. It is perfectly reasonable for a superhero to use lethal force when defending himself. So after seeing it, when I see titles like, could DC Blue Beetle beat Barbie at the box office? The reasoning is because Barbie's been out so long, it's projected to make 17 million this weekend. And there are those out there that want to make that seem like a win of getting 17 million on your opening weekend. Although when at one point that was the high end of your projections, maybe it is a win. Because the movie itself has made $3.3 million in its previews, and is now, hopefully, projected to make between 25 and 32 million this weekend. The issue is, with $3.3 million in previews, The Flash came out with 9.7 million and had a 55 million opening weekend. So Blue Beetle is hoping for around half of that opening while getting a third of the preview money. I don't know, maybe it will, but those numbers don't really add up. Now, whether it hits those targets or not may well depend on whether you can stand his actual family. Because you could probably make an argument that his family are actually more important in this movie than Blue Beetle is. Yes, at the end he kind of comes into his own and we have a suit v suit battle, but it's literally nothing you haven't seen before. Which, considering his suit tells him, you can make any weapon you can imagine, we find out his imagination, it's not very good. The first thing he summons after that is the Final Fantasy-esque sword from the trailer, but he could have summoned literally anything.
Fetch me some fried possum butter, sprinkle it on my bum, and make my gentle winds smell like cinnamon.
I mean, personally, I would have imagined some kind of creature that would suck the energy out of the other guy's suit and just make it all dead weight, but apparently, no, we can only think about blades and hammers. You definitely recognize some of the weapons that he summons. Thor's hammer was there at one point, but I think the issue is, before that, it's all about his family. The first section especially is purely about his family. Then he gets the suit, they help him discover about the suit, then he gets captured because he's an idiot and doesn't let the suit do any of the work, so the family have to go and rescue him. This untrained, random family go and rescue the superhero of the movie. So you have his uncle who works on cars, but for some reason can do advanced technological creations to take down security systems, or because he reads on the internet about the CIA. His nan used to conduct like heists and raid fortresses, and is used to big guns and wars and stuff. There's a point where she's shooting people with a Barbie chain gun, shouting down with the imperialists. But all of them, to a man, are incredibly annoying every time they're on screen, which is most of the movie. This is why when people like the director come out and goes, this feels like an authentic Latin community, well, I'm so sorry for you. If that's true, no wonder he wanted to go to university to get away from them. But maybe it's just me, maybe it's my opinion, and a whole host of other reviews, because Blue Beetle has got the highest Rotten Tomatoes scores for DC this year. I mean, yes, that does include movies like The Flash, which I think we can all understand why it got bad scores when Ezra Miller is starring as the main character, but it does make for an incredibly impressive, extremely narrow title. Albeit, the scores themselves kind of stand up. Critics, 80%, I think that's very generous, but then again, it is just fresh, and even 50% counts as fresh. But the audience score, 94% over 250 verified reviews. Even the all-audience score goes down to 88 with 1,000 ratings. So hey, a lot of the people that are going there absolutely love it. There's just not many of them. And maybe that's what this movie is. It's just an incredibly niche appeal film. It's like, we have hyper-targeted this group of people, and those are the only people that are going to like the movie. Which, given that the Actors Guild is striking, so they can't even promote their movie, there are other ways which you can drill up hype for a movie. For instance, you could get the main character to release his debut single on the same day as the release, paying homage to 90s hip-hop with a Fresh Prince kind of feel.
And I kick it. Yes, you can.
But it is interesting when you listen to some of the lyrics. He says things like,
Representation matters, you dealing with a monster.
So you've got a movie that you've made had an entirely niche appeal because everything is constantly about that all the time, to the point where everybody else in the entire world is just going, this is really shallow, please can we do something entertaining? But we can't, because in Hollywood, representation matters and you dealing with a monster. Okay, but why does it matter? Well, maybe it's his next line, right? I'm about to be a star like Al Pacino, I'm stacking C notes, so add a 0.
I'm about to be a star like Al Pacino, so add a 0.
Representation matters because I'll be a star as big as Al Pacino, which will make me a lot of money. I mean, hey, I just didn't expect you to be that honest about it. But when it's increasing your bank balance, I can understand why you think it matters.
We need to stand on the right side of history.
How does it...
When we asked him about his playlist, he replied, I'm an equal opportunist when it comes to the ears. Does that mean you're not for everything else? I'd love to know. Now, as you progress through the movies, there are some of the inevitable lines that have to be shoved into everything nowadays. They're talking about a corporation and it's like, oh, can you believe that they actually gave the job to a man rather than a woman? Do you know why? And his first response was, sexism? No, companies are supposed to promote on merit because they have profit as their motive. This is also a company where you're talking to the daughter of the female CEO of the company at the time, who's the villain of the movie, by the way, so maybe giving it to the bloke was the better thing to do after all, eh? Maybe that's why he got promoted, because the alternative was a villain.
How does it...
So while there are comments like that, that's not the worst thing in that regard. That comes later in the movie. For me, the few little digs like that through the movie were about of the same annoyance as their attempts at humor, so it didn't bother me that much. The thing that really annoyed me is stuff like this, that a DC movie is actually fun for once. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I have a feeling that what they found fun, I just found annoying. Jamie's tough life on the poverty-stricken districts of a fictional city and his tight-knit family of immigrants shake up the formula enough to keep our interest. Do you see what people seem to like about this movie? Well, they're poor and they're not American.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't care.
As somebody who isn't American, I'm gonna need a bit more depth than that, mate. In fact, I wouldn't need more depth than that if you made a good action movie. I'll take those as well. When the majority of a movie is taken up by this family, I am going to need more than just they're not American, thank you. Blue Beetle is not just another loner with a secret. That's a shame. It probably would have been more interesting. Then, maybe I could have got to see him use the suit more, rather than getting kidnapped and having to watch a family of nobodies take over an entire military complex. Using gadgets from a different hero, who used the Blue Beetle tech that wouldn't work for him to create sort of Batman-esque gadgets, which is where the Batman's a fascist line came from. And despite that actor coming out and going, no, it's because he really loved Blue Beetle, he was just going, I don't like Batman. No. No, you could tell that was a genuinely held opinion by the character. He just tried to walk it back after the backlash.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
Now, apparently, this film was originally planned for a HBO Max release, which would explain the long periods of nothing happening except sitting around a table talking to his family. I mean, just listen to the descriptions the New York Post gives about the characters and see if you like them from it. Rudy, which is the Batman guy, is a punchline-packed mad scientist. Jamie calls him the Mexican Doc Brown. His sister is a free-thinking rebel. There's his dad. The reason they don't describe his personality is because he doesn't have one. The only reason he's in this movie is to die. I'm not even joking. The dad dies, distracts the son who then gets captured, and then reappears just as the kid's about to die to go, you can't die yet. Believe in yourself, Barry. I mean, Blue Beetle. Yes, anyone who's seen any of the CW Flash episodes will be very familiar with that kind of scene. In fact, if anything, the Flash was the fastest man alive, while Blue Beetle will be the most stupid one. They've got his mom, the Eternal Optimist, and his nan, who has some badass skills up her sleeve because she's some kind of weird guerrilla war veteran. But the worst part of the description is when they go, Victoria's henchman, the powerful Conrad, is dynamically fleshed out as well, which is a very interesting way to describe Basic. If you want the henchman's character arc, it is, I'm evil and going to murder you and your family and everyone you love, who then, after doing this for 99.9% of the movie, suddenly remembers he's Latino and then he's a good guy. I'm not joking, there is nothing else to his character than that. There's even a point where he goes up to the main villain and goes, you made me remember where I came from. And I'm like, yeah, but that happened like half an hour ago. And then you spent the next half an hour trying to kill Blue Beetle, and only when he defeats you do you go, oh, I remember now, I'm a good guy. After which, by the way, Blue Beetle just goes completely back on his morality. For the rest of the movie, he's been like, oh no, please don't kill people. And then he lets the henchman viciously murder his boss.
We need to stand on the right side of history.
He just stands there and watches it. This movie doesn't make any sense, and the more you think about it, the worse it gets. I'm not even sure who the real villain is, right? Because it might be just capitalism, or sort of the military complex, or it might be that the director just hates his mom who's a CEO. I don't know. And I don't think that's my fault. I think that's what this movie is. It seems like it was going, look, here's a Latino family, watch them go through their lives. The superhero bit simply existed to give the reason a family to do something, and in the middle, we're just gonna randomly put in these little messages all over the place for our own personal belief systems.
I'm an American! I'm an American!
Now, the director hasn't been helping in this regard, even outside of the movie, where he's been doing things like, is it possible to have a Latino superhero on a Times Square billboard? Has anything happened that would suggest it isn't? Or is it just that you have a personal chip on your shoulder and wanted for some reason to tell the world about it? If we were to think, could we show a Latino superhero in Times Square? If we were to even to think about it, is that possible? At this point, you're just broadcasting your own insecurities rather than talking to objective reality, mate. Now it's happening, proving that you were paranoid all along. There were also other various different messages about it, which I honestly don't know enough about that kind of region's history to comment. Talking about themes of displacement, colonialism, and gentrification. The last one's always an interesting one, isn't it? It's like people just buy houses naturally. They improve the area, and for some reason that's a bad thing. There's a whole movie sequence of memories about bombs dropping and stuff, and he goes back through this kid's life where he was taken as a child and then raised as an American, and then suddenly goes, no, I remember my roots, and turns on them. And that switch is instantaneous, by the way. He has no other arc until he gets defeated in a fight. We see this memory sequence, and now he changes sides. You may have wanted to see Blue Beetle defeat the villain, but we can't have that because I've got a no-kill rule. But if I let somebody else do it in front of me, I've avoided my own principles. Now, in an interview with the main star, he talks about how he was nervous because he didn't audition for this role, so how do they know they got the right person? And his acting coach told him, this nervousness is your ego.
How does it...
The point of the movie isn't to make you the biggest star. This movie is to make people feel seen. It's larger than you. This is a cultural moment, folks. Blue Beetle is gonna save lives. Yeah, you know that massive continent? The one with 422 million people on it? Yeah, nobody sees them. How patronizing can you get? We've got representation is important because it needs to increase my own bank balance.
Representation matters, you dealing with a monster. I'm about to be a star like Al Pacino, so at a zero.
Whereas I'm not seen even though I've got a $120 million movie to my name. And the reason I'm increasing my bank balance, it's not for me, it's for everybody else. I'm making money for you guys. I'm sure a guy who's struggling to get by in Mexico is so happy, his life so much better, because this actor specifically has added a zero to his bank balance. He must be so happy that he's seen. In fact, the only thing I agree with your acting coach on this is your ego, alright? Although it is interesting when he goes, it's not about making you the biggest, because you wouldn't know that from his debut single.
I'm about to be a star like Al Pacino and Leo DiCaprio.
It is interesting when he says, do you feel the pressure for Blue Beetle to be a blockbuster? And goes, I'm sure Warner Brothers feels there's pressure, so not you then. It's like being asked, are you nervous because somebody risked $120 million on you? And you go, well, it's their money, not mine. Even shook his head, chastising himself, going, that sounded a little snarky. Yes, it did. And then he recalibrates. Of course, I want this to be the biggest movie of all time. Okay, now you've overcompensated the other way. 3.3 million in previews. Just say, I really hope the audience likes it. And I truly feel it's a worldwide movie. I don't. The rest of the world doesn't care what nation you come from. To you, it might be a major part of your identity because you grew up there. It's your culture. That's great. Nobody else cares. Everybody else wants to be entertained. Everyone else wants some depth. Even if it's just a movie which is entertaining because there's a lot happening all of the time, that would still be more interesting than you talking to an obnoxious family. But at the same time, there's box office smashes that aren't the best movies and vice versa. I don't want to be a prisoner to numbers. Well, I hate to break it to you, dude, but you're an actor, and so you are. Oh, sure, you can make Oscar bait where you just make trash, but because it's so pretentious, they like to pretend they like it because everybody else doesn't like it, and that makes them special and unique, so they give it an Oscar. But apart from that niche opportunity, when it comes to actually entertainment, numbers matter. And that's why, when the director is outlining plans for 2 more films, I have to ask, why? What was there about this that needed another movie? You couldn't even make a good plot for this one. The entire plot is basically a CEO of a company wants to make a load of war machines, which she's designed by looking at the Blue Beetle, but she couldn't get the data from it until it chose a host. So after that gets stolen and he ends up with it and it chooses him as the Blue Beetle, well, now she can capture him, remove the sentient AI code from the Blue Beetle itself, implant it in her already pre-built war machines, and then just have an army.
That doesn't make any sense.
Now, for some reason, this code, when it gets transplanted into those machines, it doesn't seem to make them sentient, it just allows them to grow more weapons and stuff. Don't ask me how that's possible. And she does lose this code when somebody stamps on a tablet for her. It does turn out that the villain was thwarted because she didn't have an iCloud subscription to upload it to. If only she'd made a backup. But that's the entire story and motivation of the villain. I just want to make some robots. The stupid thing is, she does actually make the robots successfully and never use them. She's got her henchmen, but downstairs there was hundreds of the things. She just flew off in a helicopter and left them all. And don't even get me started about how the transfer process sucked all of Blue Beetle's energy away. And then his family member has to come up to him and go, take your pain and use it as power. I'm pretty sure it was going for the generational trauma angle. But as he does want 2 more films, it did obviously mean that there'd be a shocking twist at the end of the movie. Absolutely shocking. We hid it behind the credits because we had to give you some kind of reason to care about our names after you just watched that mess. The movie certainly wasn't going to do it for you. So what did the post-credit scene have? Oh, well, it turns out that his girlfriend's dad is alive. The original Blue Beetle, even though the Beetle didn't choose him. So I guess what? The promise is that the sequel might actually have a more interesting character than the first one did? Not really sure that's the message you intended to send, but it's the one I'm hoping for. Now, there are a lot of people who are calling him sort of a Mexican Spider-Man, and maybe he is with the later suits, but he also does come across as an Iron Man. The non-lethal weapons he's using definitely have a similar feel. But I also think that's part of the problem. The director has said that VFX is a tool, it's not a dependency. But the last fight doesn't even have any impact by that point. Now, maybe, admittedly, this was a me problem. It might have been that after an hour and a half of this movie, my soul had left my body, and so I no longer cared about anything that was happening in my corporeal form. But the fight itself, considering that he could create anything, and we're just sticking to basic things like blades, this. It's like, dude, you really need a better imagination. And so all it devolved into was just guy in suit fights other guy in suit. We're just gonna have armored man punch armored man until eventually one of them gets through the armor and it's over. At which point, by the way, he just seems to power up and instantly win. None of it was about skill or training. It wasn't about two people that had earned these abilities and then the better man won. No, he just arbitrarily gained enough XP to hit a level up in Diablo 4 and the level up explosion killed him. If you're like, I don't get that, I don't play Diablo 4, that's a very niche joke, I'm like, exactly. That's how I felt for this entire movie. The Telegraph says it's hard to celebrate much of a win for representation here when the collective portrait is such a yabbering cliche. It's a bit rich for the film to dine out on pacifism. It's like, well, does it? Because Blue Beetle comes across as an idiot because he keeps being attacked by all these people and going, no, don't do anything, you might hurt them. So he just gets annihilated for most of the movie. But then the moment he gets captured, his family come along and they just start slaughtering people. You really get the, what are you trying to say here? Because after his family starts slaughtering people, then Blue Beetle doesn't seem to care about it either. And nobody changed his mind. It was more like a different person made that part of the movie. Was the first half designed for your TV run and then the action bit at the end was like, oh, we've got movie money now, we can actually do something with this. The emotional beats are strenuous yawns. The crashing lack of novelty disguised desperately but not well. It's dim, dull. If you've got an ounce of fatigue around superheroes, this is not the one. Come on, Telegraph, tell us how you really feel. And I just love how that is contrasted with The Guardian coming in as, it's a perky superhero caper that offers more of the same. 3 out of 5. It's exactly like everything else. But it's the first live-action Latino superhero adventure, which is a milestone for representation, so we'd better give it a 3 out of 5.
Representation matters, you dealing with a monster.
And I think when you're desperately trying to spin this movie as it might end Barbie's rail by getting $30 million in its debut on a $125 million movie budget, even the people that would love to spin it as a success really can't. When I see things like it's an electric start to a new DCU, I can't help wondering if we watched the same movie. The whole cast has dynamic chemistry. It's hilarious and quirky, instantly iconic. And the father gets the tears flowing when he dies because his son is an idiot and then comes back to go, you can do it, I believe in you. And even at one point says, this is my destiny, it's what I was made for. What, dying? Your entire life, the entire point of your existence was to die so you could come back and tell somebody else that they were good at something. If that's the only thing you feel like you were put on this planet to do, then I can understand why people were crying, because that is pitiful. In fact, in that scene, you have to believe that he's literally gone to heaven and speaking to him in heaven. Because otherwise, as Mauler pointed out, that would just be inside his own head, which means he's telling himself that he's amazing and his father died just because he was great. Which, with the amount of egos going around in this movie, it's possible. It really is.
We need to stand on the right side of history.
How does it...
Where the cracks begin to show is the main villain, who basically just wanted to make profit for her company. A one-dimensional antagonist. She's a walking plot device with nothing more than that. Wait, you liked this movie. You called this an electric start, but so far the only thing you seem to have liked is the family. Futuristic technology is inherently fascinating, but Sandarin fails to elevate this. They were like, I really liked the potential. It was just she ruined it. It really did. And I struggle to believe you when you say this delivers a thoroughly engaging and emotionally impactful film. As you admit how crap the villains are, say what you really liked is the music and how it highlights the bonding facets of Latino family. With so many other people just going, this is a warily formulaic tale. Hackneyed, devoid of talent, despite Susan Sarandon's knowing turn. The only thing that differentiates this adaptation from the scores of its predecessors is the fact that its characters are mostly Latino American. And I can't disagree. My problem is, I don't care about that. I don't find where somebody appears on a Dulux color chart entertaining. I think it's weird that Hollywood does. I think it's weird that Hollywood thinks that's a selling point. I wouldn't give your movie a good review just because you started talking about Yorkshire tea. And I don't think critics should do the same. And I think one of the things that has saved this movie's actual review scores are not only the fact that just to get fresh, you need over 50%, and a lot of people are going, this is 50% because it's just meh. But I think the reason why they think this movie is average is simply because there's been so many terrible superhero movies recently that their quality bar of what is average has come down. And I think that shows in certain reviews. Like The Independent, who said, this is a superhero movie that doesn't involve time travel or multiverses. Thank God. 3 out of 5. When your title is just being thankful that it doesn't have as much crap as other movies do, I'm not sure that's an advantage. I'm not sure that's a reason to give a movie more scores just because it doesn't make as many mistakes as something else. If you're judging it by other superhero superhero movies over the last 2 years, is it average? I mean, yeah, but is it average based off the entertainment value that you get compared to all other movies across time, or all other entertainment, including television? No. I do think this movie had to be in cinemas, but that's just because if it was on streaming, no one would have got to the end of it. I would have stopped watching 15 minutes in, and that's a problem, because that's all about setting up his family, which is the foundation of the movie. And so if you find the family obnoxious and insufferable, well, that's the movie. And maybe that's the part that some critics are like, well, you know, wasn't as bad as Thor. There's something pleasantly nostalgic about the film's straightforwardness, because it's just a movie about a family. I can get that, I just don't think that that is average entertainment. Oh well, it's not incredibly terrible, just not overly complicated. Is it as bad as Ant-Man the Wasp, Quantumania, or The Flash? No. Unless you judge it by what was the most boring, in which case, yes. But are we worn down by these franchises? This review so far sounds like this guy just doesn't want to talk about these things anymore. Despite the film's boundary-breaking representation of Latino talent, oh, give it a break. That is the only thing that you can say is an advantage. Maybe that's why you gave it a 3 out of 5.
Representation matters, you dealing with a monster.
If you have to start talking about the physical characteristics of your actors, you've already lost, because that is what you think is important. And nobody cares. That's just you. It really is. Blue Beetle isn't apolitical. It proudly proclaims that the city is the #1 lowest tax rate for corporations in America. Oh, I should move there. I didn't catch that the movie was saying that low tax is a bad thing. What? This is the city where they don't steal from you. Great. What's your point? Especially as his family is poor, being in a low tax city will be even better. There are references to anti-red military operations in Guatemala, a RoboCop-style private police force, and capitalist feminism of Centaurus villain. Okay. I did kind of suggest that's what they were going for. I just didn't expect the Independent to spell it out. I'm not sure that's what they were going for, but it's certainly where they ended up. Who is accurately described by one character at... No, that's not accurately described. In fact, she said her walk was sort of attractive in a Cruella Kardashian way. And it wasn't. If you want that kind of walk, you're gonna have to play Metal Gear Solid 1 and work out who isn't the bloke. I don't get that joke. That's pretty niche. Yes, that's how I felt throughout the entire movie. Blue Beetle is broad and endearingly kid-friendly in its humor. That's probably why I didn't find it funny. One of its weapons is called the bug fart. Yep, that would be one of the ones that I didn't find funny. There are some welcome flourishes. A nighttime action sequence, for example, is explicitly shot to mirror the spiteful inhumanity of ICE raids. Okay, yeah. Hey, didn't pick up on that one, gotta be honest. The spiteful inhumanity of enforcing law. Right, fair enough, okay. Blue Beetle, in the end, is quite bold enough to overcome what makes it a somewhat clunky catchphrase, family. That's what makes me strong. That's true, that does sound like something that Tarzan would say, who has only just learned how to speak English. Family, me strong. If you haven't guessed it by now, if you want to know whether I think you should spend your money on Blue Beetle, no. Maybe when it's on a streaming service, if you're curious, watch it there. The cinema, definitely not required for this movie. The fact that this was thought up of as a HBO Max film is like, okay, maybe you're at home, you got 2 hours to kill, and you're not really bothered about sort of second monitor content. Stick it on, whatever. It fulfills that kind of same slot as a CW series. But for a cinema movie, I just don't get it. It is shallow, not entertaining. And if you actually think about it, it doesn't make sense. It's required to be on a second monitor that you're not concentrating on it just to put up with it. And while I could agree that maybe it's just not meant for me, maybe that's what the humor is. Maybe there's a section of the audience that will absolutely love it. Then you come back to the idea that this is an international movie. And if you have designed a movie with that niche appeal to the point where it's just like, well, only these people will like it, I think that's a bad movie. At least it's a bad movie if you want to make a profit on $125 million. If this was some cheap budget flick that was released in a very narrow area and like, well, those are just the people that like it, whatever. But for the first movie in James Gunn's new DCU, with a character that was supposed to have for 12 years, who's meant to be DC's version of Nick Fury, I don't think I'm the one in the wrong when I think that should have wider appeal, international appeal. And I just don't think it does when your idea of comedy is calling a car a taco. There's nothing when it came to the superhero stuff that you haven't seen before. Everything's as predictable as you would expect. And the one thing that some people seem to think is its saving grace is the whole cultural aspect of it. But for me, I'm just like, I don't care about that. What else have you got? And the answer, after watching it that I came back with, is nothing, really. It's got no substance, and when it tried to have it, it didn't make any sense. And if this is symbolic of James Gunn's DCU, well, it's gonna have a mountain to climb. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.